This person, Jan Lee, asks, how do you keep your elbows back when cantering? And I think she means elbows in when cantering. How do you keep your elbows in when cantering? And I mean, I can imagine this happening. I don't know what you imagine when someone asks you, how do you keep my elbows back? Is that what you imagine when you see that?
Chicken wings. Bark, bark, bark.
Yeah, so what do you think?
Yeah, that's probably what she means. I mean, I hope she doesn't mean back, because personally I like to see the elbow a little towards the front of the body rather than back behind the back. So I hope she doesn't mean that, but I think you're probably right. She probably means keeping them still.
So how do you keep your elbows still?
Well, I think it helps not to have your
I'm in your riding lesson and I'm going like this.
Yeah. I mean, when your reins are too long, I think when your hands get too far back, that happens quite a lot. I again like to just tell people, kind of rest your elbow against the front of your stomach a little bit, you know, just to get a feel for where your hand and your arm should be. And I think a lot of times it's just overcompensation. You know, maybe the horse is lazy and their leg isn't strong enough.
Okay, so Randy, how about you? What would you do if you were teaching a clinic somewhere and somebody came in with their elbows? What would you do to help them keep their elbows still?
Well, this is actually a very common problem, a challenge for riders, and it's usually a result of the rider using too much hand instead of more seat and leg when they're riding. So you want to think when you're riding, as Patricia was saying, the elbow should be slightly in front, and you should always have ask yourself this question: is your seat coming through your elbows? Is the feeling, are you feeling more pressure on the front from your hand? Because that's usually when your elbows go flat instead of having that bend that they need to have. Without that bend, your hips can't come through your elbows is the term, and you are riding more with your seat and legs. Now, something that works with many riders is you remember the dollar bill thing where you'd put a dollar bill under your thigh, right guys?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, you just put something underneath of your hand here, or if it's down lower, put it there, and it should be able to stay there because, again, it's the hips coming through the elbows that allow the horse to move forward. If you're going like a train like this, you're not using your arm position correctly, and you're going to lose your money right away. You know, unless you're jumping and then you do the reach. But when you're working on the flat to get the feeling of it, you'll feel that you will be balanced in a different position over your seat bones than when you throw your hands forward, which is where typically people start going like this instead of coming from their seat and legs, especially those that are lower level riders.
I think you nailed it, Randy. I think that it's more than just a hand and elbow thing. It comes from your seat and your legs. So your seat has to be able to move independently from your upper body and your elbows and your shoulders, right? Yeah. So I totally agree.
Discipline of riding.
Pardon me?
For any discipline of riding.
For any discipline, whether you're dressage or Western pleasure or hunter jumper or whatever the other ones are.
Right. No one wants to see floppy elbows, right? No matter what the discipline.
You know, if I was jumping off for the $100,000 and I had to get that extra foot in there to get my right spot, man, I'd be giving her, right? I'd be giving her for that $100,000. Wouldn't you?
Yes,
you can't tell me that those guys don't do everything they got in their toolbox to get that done. I mean, if I was, but yes, when you're going to an equitation class, everything should be looking good. But I think that you mentioned something else, though, Randy, that is maybe this is what the question was, which is how do you get your elbows back when cantering? Maybe they have their arms out straight.
Yes.
Okay.
Are their shoulders too forward?
Yeah. So maybe their arms are too straight without this straight line elbow hand horse's mouth.
Right.
And that could be. So how is that? How do you fix that one? Patricia, how do you fix that one?
I think that you have to, again, bring your arms back a little so they're just kind of brushing the sides. And the most important thing is to keep that straight line from elbow to bit, which does involve a little bit of bend, you know. Have to get them to visualize what that looks and feels like. But I think, you know, the arms forward is a little easier to fix than the arms flapping, because you just have to say, bring your arm back a little bit so it's touching your body.
Yeah.
If I could add something here, something that I did a lot of learner judging in Wellington and those circuits, but the big thing is when we were watching the equitation classes or the hunter classes, if you'll just use a martingale, or what do you call the thing that goes on the front of the horse? And
martingale strap or breastplate.
Yes, all you need is if your hands should always be at that spot.
Slightly in front of the in front of the pommel.
Right, and then you'll know if your hand is all of a sudden going 6 inches in front of it, or if your hand is sliding back towards you, that you're not in the proper position to stay balanced on your horse as it's working.
Right.
That's a rule of thumb, and then you've got different people with different conformations that are going to have difficulties with that too, right? I mean, somebody with short arms, or what's that?
True. I have short arms, and I can keep my hands.
Little,
what happens?
Arms.
What happens is when riders start, when they can't keep their hands there, it's usually a result of their seat sliding back too far in the saddle. So instead of staying over their legs, their seat is slid back, and as a result, their hands come back behind where the martingale would be. So I'm a short arm rider. Even kids can do this because, you know, they're riding the smaller saddles and the smaller ponies. I have found it's pretty much the same for everybody.
Yeah. Then that gets into another thing too, right? Is your saddle fitting you properly?
Yeah.
So maybe the symptom is that your arms are straight, but the cause of it isn't your arms. It's this fact that, like you said, you're slipping to the back of your saddle and your saddle doesn't fit properly.
Yeah.
So there's so as a judge, there's kind of a picture you have in your brain, and you fit those people into that picture that you have in your brain. And if you don't fit into that picture, there's something going on with your position that you have to fix.
Yes. And it's usually not so much their hands and their elbows as what they're doing with their seat. And that's why if their seat slides back too far, they're not going to feel like their hips are coming through their elbows.
Yeah. Right. That's good. Good point. That's a now really go use this stuff and go hug your horse. I'm just going to put this up here while I end the broadcast.